When the flaws in the laws set to protect us all are revealed, there's only two options: stay broken or begin to heal.
My boy gone, he's not coming back. So me and his family got to be his boys now.
I want to tell you, in spite of what we go through, be strong, stand tall, be encouraged. Don't stop saying Black Lives Matter. Don't stop peaceful protesting. Don't stop praying. Don't stop uniting. Stand together.
And we know healing can be just as hard as being broken. Just ask Breonna Taylor's mother, who continues to fight with wounds still wide open.
What we need is change, and we're at a point where we can get that change, but we have to stand together. We have to vote.
But healing isn't just a trendy hashtag with blue likes and red hearts. It's actions leading to real change. Yes, removing statues is a start. Are you ready for your part?
My brother cannot be a voice today. We have to be that voice. We have to be the change. And we have to be his legacy.
Are you ready to have the real conversations?
I'm marching for George, for Breonna, for Ahmaud, for Jacob, for Pamela Turner, for Michael Brown, Trayvon, and anybody else who lost their lives.
The ones that will make you uncomfortable and accountable, but perhaps change this nation?
Every black person in the United States is gonna stand up. We're tired. I'm tired of looking at cameras and seeing these young black and brown people suffer.
Powerful words coming from the families of black people killed or injured by police. Good evening to you, everybody, and welcome to The Conversation. I'm Kerry Charles.
And I'm Matt Barnes.
And I'm Darlene Hill. The conversation continues tonight with a look at the March on Washington, or the Commitment March, held in our nation's capital just a couple of weeks ago.
The families you just heard were joined by civil rights leaders and thousands from across the country at the Lincoln Memorial to commemorate the anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington, where the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. famously laid out a vision for harmony between white and black people 57 years ago.
Now, before we get started, we want to take a moment to recognize a couple of community partners that are helping spread the word about the conversation. Radio 1 and Bounce TV are making sure more people can hear what's being said. Our friends at Bounce TV are airing a simulcast of tonight's program.
Now, since the death of George Floyd in May, there has been an outcry for racial justice and police reform around the country. The George Floyd Policing and Justice Act passed in the House and is now awaiting on Senate approval. The bill proposes broad efforts to stop racial profiling and police brutality, including by prohibiting no-knock warrants and police chokeholds.
It would also create a national registry of police misconduct and would make it easier for officers to be prosecuted and sued in cases of misconduct and abuse.
Which leads us to another death in police custody that didn't become public until recently. The in-custody death of Daniel Prude is similar to George Floyd's case, but happened 2 months before Floyd's death. You do need to know the video you're about to see is disturbing. Daniel Prude was reportedly suffering a mental health crisis. This has happened on March 23rd in Rochester, New York, when his brother called first responders. Police body camera video shows Prude handcuffed and naked in the middle of the street. Officers placed a bag over Prude's head and restrained him. He stopped moving after a couple of minutes and died a week later. The officers involved have all been suspended.
Another case. 29-year-old Dijon Kizzy was killed after a traffic stop. It was supposed to be a routine traffic stop on a bicycle in South Los Angeles. Now, this is ring and cell phone video of the incident. Kizzy can be seen running away from deputies as they tried to stop him. Now, deputies say Kizzy punched one of them in the face, ran off, and tossed a gun on the ground. That's when both deputies opened fire, killing Kizzy again as he tried to run away. This shooting is also now under investigation.
A Kenosha, Wisconsin officer shot Jacob Blake in the back 7 times as he walked away from police. Blake says he's paralyzed from the waist down, still in a lot of pain. Protests erupted following the shooting. While covering the recent march in Washington, I met a Kenosha woman who says she's known Blake for several years. Diane Sanders says she cried for days after finding out what happened to him. She told me she marched in Kenosha, was pepper sprayed, but will continue to take to the streets.
So I can enlighten my children, my grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren. Well, I have 11 great-grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren, and I want them to know that I had to be part of this march to make it possible for them to be our future.
But isn't that a shame?
It is. It's god-awful.
Then there's Breonna Taylor. Officers forced their way into her home and shot her as she slept. She died minutes later.
Taylor was hit 5 times in that March 13th raid. Her boyfriend has since filed a civil complaint against the city of Louisville, Kentucky, and the police department. And now to Florida, where a deputy is on administrative leave after sending a teen inmate to the hospital. In the video, you can see the deputy choking and hitting the teenager after the teen refused to take his arms out of his shirt because he said he was cold. Now, all of the incidents you just heard and seen are just a small part of the reason behind the marches we see across the country, including the one recently held in D.C.
Now, the 63 march, it pushed for jobs and freedom. Several decades later, some of our neighbors say there is still a need for change.
I want you to hear from the future of our nation.
A day before the speakers,
Here we are in 2020.
a day before the crowds packed the National Mall,
We come to Washington by the thousands.
we met people who have connections to Central Ohio. We talked about the March on Washington, or the Commitment March. The event, which attracted thousands, served as a call for reforms and equal treatment for black citizens when it comes to policing and the criminal justice system.
I am so sickened by what is taking place in America. It saddens me that this continues week after week and nothing is being done about it.
In June, artists transformed 2 blocks of 16th Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. into Black Lives Matter Plaza. Here, people sometimes share their voices, their pain.
It's really, I don't even want to say annoying at this point. It's irritating because we see it so often, and then we see white people who can carry around AK-47s and actually kill people, and they can get off so easy.
Bobby Montgomery lives in Black Lick. I met him near the Lincoln Memorial.
I think it's very important that this country focus on police reform and criminal justice reform. It's harming this country irreparably. Once people get caught up in the system, it's so difficult to get out. I don't believe police are supposed to be, judge, jury, executioner. At the same time, I believe the majority of them are good people and, want to help people. It's a difficult situation, and I just think everyone really needs to just show kindness and empathy to one another.
We didn't just come today to have a show.
There's confusion.
The inequality is it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing that we can't be treated equally because we really just don't matter to anyone.
People of all backgrounds gathered, listened, marched, and declared Black Lives Matter.
It's as if our lives doesn't matter, but our lives have always mattered.
Inside of a historic Lincoln Theater, a place of refuge for blacks in Columbus during the days of segregation, we caught up with some locals who attended the march. We broke them into 2 groups to discuss areas of concern and the march.
I took away just basically me being present in my own situations in my day-to-day life and making sure that I advocate as much as possible.
We're still having to carry this fight here 57 years after King delivered his dream to the country.
It's a shame that this is going on so long. The opportunities are there, but people continue to be silent. The things that need to change can't happen with just a small group of people or a selected group of people. It has to be togetherness.
As a young black man, hearing and having conversations that take place in my workplace and seeing things that take place on the news, it's like, when does it stop? When will it end?
It's been 57 years, and here we are again, but we're still standing despite the obstacles, the adversity. We're a resilient people, and I was so touched and inspired by that and just motivated.
The march is done. We're back home. We're still seeing stories of injustice. Where do you all think we go from here, or where do you take the conversation? How do you evoke change? What's next?
And I would say for myself, learning the history, I think it's just very frustrating how the rules of the game change. Like you try to play it their way and then something else, it has to be done another way. So you get out of slavery, then it's your sharecropping. Then it's you go and build your own Black Wall Street. They burn that down. You do your civil rights movement. They kill the leader. Here we are, 2020, we have mass incarceration and we're back to police brutalities.
I think it individually, that it starts with the person, your interactions with your family, with your friends, your community, always affirming everyone's value, treating everyone with respect, and stepping outside of your comfort zone sometimes and learning about people who are different cultures, different customs, and growing as an individual, taking that with you into the workplace, into the community, in all aspects of your life, and not just talking about it, but actually modeling that. And I think that's a way for us all to move forward towards that beloved community that Dr. King and others talked about.
I believe it's all about the education. We have to start, as mentioned, with the man in the mirror. But then again, it's a matter of spreading the knowledge and making sure that we educate ourselves on history, because we're very likely to repeat history if we don't know.
What did you all think when you saw this video out of Rochester?
I was outraged because once again, the type of treatment that we receive as Black people by law enforcement is so unacceptable, but yet it continues. And I'm tired. I am tired of America treating us as if we are dogs on the street. Dogs are treated a lot better than we have ever been treated.
I just read something that I missed. Someone in LA was killed, another Black man. But I can see these protests and these rallies, and people feel like their rights are violated because they have to wear masks, and they go to the State House with assault weapons and AR-15s, and nobody does anything. If a Black man or woman walks down the street with an assault weapon,
what would happen?
Oh, they get shot. There would be no question. There would be no negotiation.
They demonstrate humanity in one community and inhumanity in another.
Constantly we see this. And with social media and cell phone recorders, it's coming out more and more.
I think that what police officers and police commissioners and the attorney generals, I don't think that they understand that we simply just want change.
We've been having these conversations for many, many years, and listening to the frustration of some of the other speakers and wondering, when is it going to get better? So why does it feel like we're on a merry-go-round sometimes about these same issues?
All right, tens of thousands of people attended that anniversary and march on Washington, and Central Ohio was well represented. Students in classrooms across the nation will one day read about it and see those pictures in the history books. At least, let's hope so. A lot of people, peaceful protesters, didn't make the trip because of the pandemic, but Congresswoman Joyce Beatty says she went for personal reasons. This was one march she could not afford to miss.
First, of course, with COVID-19, and then when we think about the pandemics of too many senseless lives being taken, when we think about the pandemic of all of the injustices that we're faced for, I think it brought it together that people came and stood for hours. And it was very much like it was 57 years ago. It was peaceful. People were elated to be there and stand together. So I think it built hope, and it gave me hope for the future. It was very historic for me. It was a great honor, not only as a member of Congress, but as a Black woman, someone who understands the power of protesting and marching and the power of what happened 57 years ago to the date, when you had people marching for jobs and freedom. But for me, it was very personal.
Proud and personal. Because Joyce Beatty says her husband's grandmother, Mamie Moore, was invited by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the iconic I Have a Dream speech. Moore, who marched for civil rights right here in Columbus from the 1940s to 60s, wasn't allowed to address the sea of people there because, she says, women weren't allowed to be part of the speaking part of the program. Decades later, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty stood on those same steps, demanding change.
Here I am serving in Congress, fighting for some of those same things. And while that's disappointing in some ways, we have moved the needle and made some progress. But the takeaway for me was we still have so much work to do. We still have to continue to be strong voices in this community. We still have to make sure that people get out and make their vote count. We still have to fight against all of the criminal justice injustices. We still have to fight for affordable housing and education and health care. So all of those things I took with me when I stood on those steps speaking truth to power.
Truth to power. So what's next? You heard the Congresswoman say that more work needs to be done. It's not enough to march. It's time to vote. Vote, as Michelle Obama would say, like your life depended on it. Joyce Beatty says that women lawmakers all over the nation are now uniting to make sure that no one is robbed of their right to vote. Matt?
And you know, Columbus City Council President Shannon Hardin wasn't planning on going to D.C. for the march due to precautions for COVID-19. But then he heard that Congresswoman Beatty was going to speak, and he felt compelled to go. And now looking back, he says he's glad that he did.
I was not expecting that many people. I was not expecting the sense that you had of collective movement and folks asking for really demanding change as it pertains to race and equity.
What was the mood like when you were there in terms of, was it more inspirational? Was it more, let's get things done? What was the vibe?
It was very action oriented. Almost every speaker that spoke talked about the need to get out the vote this fall. That protesting is the start of the strategy, but the second part of the strategy is actually following that up with voting. I heard loud and clear from our residents when they took the streets. I think they created a moment and an opportunity for us to lean into conversations that will hopefully keep Black and brown and truthfully all of us safe if we treat it with the dignity that it deserves, which is thoughtful policymaking around reforms.
We weren't alive 57 years ago to see the March on Washington with Martin Luther King and John Lewis speaking. But what did it mean just be in that moment in that same area where you know history was made 57 years ago?
It was so powerful to stand where Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. And literally, I was 10 feet away from that, looking out off of the Lincoln Memorial. This, though, was very pertinent to our time. I stood next to Eric Gardner Jr., whose father's last words we all know were, "I can't breathe." And I talked to him for hours that afternoon. And so it was real. It was me standing next to the leaders of our day who are putting themselves out there and demanding change and leading a movement. And you felt that. You felt the weight of the moment. You felt the sense of solidarity. And you saw and heard a lot about our next action step, which is to vote. Just like folks put their physical health on the line and marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and people bled because of that. That folks put their health on the line to go and say that we must have reform, we must change, and we must vote our way there. I thought that was extremely powerful, and I think that I heard that a lot from folks.
That's the perspective of City Council President Shannon Hardin. So, Carrie, you've actually done this march twice now. You've seen it twice. But what did you make of this one, especially in the time of COVID? You weren't sure what the crowd was going to be like, and it looked fairly large.
Yeah, you know, it was different this time around because people really wanted to be there. I mean, folks were really putting their lives on the line to be there. We talked to so many people from Central Ohio. We heard from a lot of them earlier, but it was also that sense, Matt, being out there, that these people, because in case folks at home hadn't noticed, I am a black man, you are a brother as well. These folks were out here marching on my behalf, is how I felt. Darlene, looking out here and listening to so many people from different parts of the country, we're all sharing the same stories, similar concerns, and so it was sad in a sense.
Yes.
There was some sense of hope.
Right.
But geez, we wanted to push for this change.
Just heard from Shannon Harding just talk about how he was hearing from the leaders of today. You were out there, like you said, as a reporter trying to be objective, but you are a black man, you are a brother in America. What was it like seeing some of those leaders right now being so young, and some of those leaders in this movement, black and white and Asian and Hispanic, everybody, a sea of color out there?
Yeah, and that's what made a huge difference. You heard people say a number of times, you've heard them say, this one was different. In this crowd right here, you don't just see black folks. You see folks of all different backgrounds. You see folks with a number of different stories, their different perspectives that they bring to the table. And I think that was a huge difference. I was there in 2013 for the 50th anniversary of the 63 March, and you saw a lot of people there, but this time around, you saw a lot of diversity. I was working at a station in North Carolina, one of our sister stations, and went to cover this event, and it was really powerful then. That was obviously the 50th, so you had John Lewis there, and of course, you know, we lost him recently, but it was such a privilege to be there. But you talk to so many people, and you say, and you hope that we don't have to continue to have these marches to push for change and equality.
I think that's the thing, is that we talk about that march happening 57 years ago, and the fact that we're still having to do this march, and you see now Dr. King's kids having to, you know, be...
And grandkids.
And grandkids,
right.
Exactly. They're the ones helping lead this march and do those speeches. I just wonder, what kind of range of age did you see? The same people that marched all the way in 1963 to those who obviously weren't even born?
Yeah, I mean, generations of people, and sadly, this is a generational thing, but I'll tell you what you also saw. I saw folks out there on crutches. I saw folks in wheelchairs, folks with one leg. You saw folks who were overweight, excessively overweight. You know, they had to carry that around, and it was painful in many ways. You could see it written on their faces, but they wanted to be there.
That important to them.
I heard from some people who, Carrie was just so excited to get out there, but they were so excited to see BLM, the plaza there, those letters painted out on the streets there.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter Plaza is really interesting, and you were able to stop right there and see those letters. And we know that's where John Lewis made his last public appearance. So powerful out there for sure. Well, you know, we had a team in D.C. NBC4 executive producer Tenessa Jennings has some of the sights and sounds from this year's march.
Looking at that video, of course, with that our executive producer Tenessa shot, it does go back to what Congresswoman Joyce Beatty just said. There's a lot of, she was proud. She was proud to be there as a lawmaker trying to bring about change. And she was also proud to be there as a black woman. Let's talk about something that we were talking about online and how we're hearing from head coach Doc Rivers, how we're hearing from Michael Jordan, how they do things all the time behind the scenes, but they're publicly coming out talking about what needs to be done right now and how this hurts and how we as black people continue to love this country, but the country doesn't love us back.
I've been so proud of seeing some of the professional athletes among the leagues, not just the NBA, but we saw tennis, we saw the NHL all take games off so that we could put more attention to what is happening in
this week at the U.S. Open. Naomi, what she's doing and wearing the mask with the black lives that have been lost
Naomi
to police.
Osaka, she says she has 7 masks for 7 different people. She wished she could have more, and it's sad that she has to.
I tell you, when Major League Baseball canceled those games that night, it was so powerful. People taking a moment to really stop and think about what this is.
That's what this is all about. It's about having a conversation and thinking. And if you can't step in our shoes, I understand that. If you're not a black man or woman, but you can have a heart to understand what's happening. And we just, rolled through about only 6 situations, but there are many more.
But it's all about listening and learning.
Oh my gosh, we're right on. That's exactly what I was going to say. Sometimes you just need to stop and just listen and engage and let people be vocal and voice themselves. I think it's great that we have this platform. And honestly, Secret, I don't know if you all feel this way. This is kind of tiring to produce this type of show because we have to sit. I was talking with Tenessa and she was saying, Carrie, I'm looking at this video over and over again. I'm trying to find these stories. It's tough.
It's hard.
Well, just what we did a couple of seconds ago at the top of the newscast. I mean, top of the conversation, showing 5 or 6 edits, of the Black Lives Lost, back to back to back like that. That gets to be exhausting.
We hope you and those close to you will keep the conversation going wherever you are. If you need a starting point, we have put together some resources to help you.
Visit NBC4i.com/The Conversation. Look for the headline, The Conversation Resources.
And once you go there, you'll find a network of Central Ohio organizations that are working toward racial equality, even how to contact elected officials. We do thank you for joining us tonight for The Conversation.
As you listen to the stories of the people who give this country its foundation, will you be ready to stand as a non-pandering ally as we continue the conversation?